you think about your pupil during the day, it's really quite small, which is reducing the amount of light entering your eye because it's really bright. Whereas if you think about it at night, the pupil becomes much larger, allowing more light in so that you can still see correctly. And it's exactly the same with aperture. Each aperture is represented by a number, which we call an f-stop. Each number represents a different size of aperture, which typically ranges from f1.4, the largest, to f36, which is the smallest. Now I know this seems a little counterintuitive, but as long as you remember, the smaller the number, the wider the aperture. The larger the number, the smaller the aperture. So as we move up the sequence of apertures, we halve the amount of light entering the camera for each f-stop. And conversely, as we come down, we double the amount of light entering. So f5.6 allows half the amount of light into the camera that f2.8 does. So apart from controlling the light, there's one other really cool thing that aperture allows you to do. So we can use the aperture to control the depth of field. That is the amount of the final image that appears to be in sharp focus. If you look at this tape measure example, if we use an aperture of f2.8, only a small part of the tape measure appears in focus. If you now watch as we change the aperture to f22, for example, much more of the tape measure becomes focused. So let's have a look at this in a real life example. So here we've got an example of depth of field using aperture control. I've got a really nice park bench here in front of me with a really nice inscription across it, and I want to take a photograph of that inscription going all the way across. So at the moment I've got my aperture set really wide to f1.8, and I'm going to take the first shot. There we go, and now I'm going to adjust it to f7.1, which is a smaller aperture, so less light's getting in, but I'm increasing the depth of field on the picture. So here we go again. Change it to 7.1, take the picture, okay? And then my final example is going to be at f22, so I'm really going to close the aperture right down, which gives me the maximum depth of field, which should give me the whole of the inscription in focus. So f22, take the picture, and what we'll do now, we'll review the results and see what we find. So in this image of the bench, where we've used an aperture of 1.8 and actually focused on the centre of the inscription, we see that the centre is nicely in focus and we can read it very clearly, whereas the foreground and the background are both out of focus and actually blurred to the point where you can't read them properly. On this photograph, where the aperture was set to 7.1, the focus is